Hey everyone, Phil from After Lens here, and this is my 6 months review of the Blackmagic PYXIS 12K. So I've already made quite a few videos about or with this camera, and I've shared a lot of footage. I've also done a first impression video, comparison videos. So today I really want to concentrate on my experience using it as my main camera for the past 6 months on commercial, documentary and personal shoots. As always, I don't like to rush when I do reviews. I really want to take my time to give you an honest and genuine opinion. I want to tell you what I like about the camera, but also what I don't like, what could be improved, and whether or not I would recommend it and who I think it is for. I will also discuss my thoughts on what the next version of the PYXIS 12K should or could be from my point of view. I will also address the bending and the noise issue, as a lot of people have reached out. And I will also take a minute to introduce a new sponsor for this year and the reason behind the switch. And as always, be sure to subscribe to see more videos like this one, and let's get into it. This video is sponsored by audio. So as you know, I've been shooting with Blackmagic cameras for nearly 13 years, but over the past 3 years, they've released quite a few cameras. So I've been using the Cinema Camera 6K, the PYXIS 6K, but also the Ursa Cine lineup, the 12K LF, and the 17K. And now, of course, the PYXIS 12K. Since the release of the original PYXIS 6K, I've always loved the form factor and the modularity of it. But there were a few things missing, like the frame rates. And since in the meantime I also got to use the Ursa 12K and 17K, I got pretty used to having 16 stops of dynamic range. By the way, if you want to know more about this camera in terms of the specs and everything like that, feel free to watch my first impression video as well as my comparison videos. This is my 6 months review based on my experience, and it's less of a technical review. So over the past 6 months, I've used the PYXIS 12K in various scenarios. I first shot a portrait piece with my friend Thomas Tessier. It was a 3-day shoot in extreme heat, and we were super happy with the results. For that one, we used an Nisi Oris, and most of it was shot with natural light. Then Thomas and I started working on a pretty big commercial gig at the end of last year. We had 8 different scenes and about 20 actors. Most of it was shot indoors with artificial lighting, but we also had a couple of scenes outdoors with natural light. The project isn't released yet, and I can't wait to show it to you, and I'll be sure to share a link as soon as it's out. And for that one, we had the Atlas Mercury Anamorphics. And as always, I'll make sure to put all the gear below that I've used, including the adapters, cages and things like that. And of course, I use the camera on my own as well, in various situations and with different lenses, shooting personal, licensing and outdoor content. I also use the camera fully rigged up, but also in a very minimal way. So I think after all this time and these different kind of projects, I've got a pretty good idea of the camera. After using it for 6 months pretty much every week, there's a lot that I like about this camera. For me, the things that stand out most about the camera is how flexible and versatile it can be. What I mean is that this camera can handle pretty much anything. I know there's definitely more things that go into filmmaking than just a camera, but the PYXIS 12K really allows you to work on pretty much any project. From the image quality to the resolution, the aspect ratio, the dynamic range, the frame rate, the PYXIS 12K is a very complete camera. It's not perfect, obviously, but it's pretty close in my opinion. If I was coming into filmmaking right now in 2026, this is probably the camera that I would get. Of course, it always depends on the way that you shoot and the projects that you work on. A lot of people are talking about how unnecessary it is to have 12K, but I think they're kind of missing the point, because this camera for me is a great 8K and 4K camera, since there's no crop when you apply those resolutions. So you're essentially getting all the benefits from shooting open gate without a crop, and you can choose and scale your resolution depending on the project. Most of the time I don't shoot 12K, I shoot most of my footage in 8K, so it gives me a very clean 4K image. As before with the original PYXIS and pretty much all Blackmagic cameras that I own, the image quality is amazing and I really like the look of this sensor. I've said before that the Ursa 12K LF is my favorite camera when it comes to pure image quality, and this one has essentially the same sensor in it. The combination of having a full frame sensor with Blackmagic's color science and the B-raw file is just incredible. And of course you've got so many resolutions to choose from and also anamorphic options. I've shot so many different scenes with so many different combinations in terms of resolution and aspect ratios and frame rate, and I've been happy every single time. This camera is really well built. The same goes with the PYXIS 6K. It really feels tight. You've got that metal feeling that I really like. And I used to call the PYXIS 6K the little brick, and this hasn't changed. It feels very dense and very solid. It's definitely a step up from the Pocket lineup that had more of a plasticky feel. And I'd go as far as to say that I prefer the build quality of the PYXIS compared to the Ursa lineup. And I've used the PYXIS 12K in very harsh environments, like in the rain, in the cold, in the snow, in the heat, and it handled it pretty well. Of course, I wouldn't recommend to drench the camera like I did in Iceland, but it goes to show that this camera is very robust. And for someone like me that spends a lot of time shooting outdoors, it's quite important. It's very easy to rig up, but also carry and travel with, and to kind of adjust to the way that you want to shoot. Like a lot of people have said before, it's a lot smaller in person than it looks in the photos. The boxy shape is also very handy, whether I carry it in a backpack or in my Temba doctor style bags. It's always very easy to carry and transport, whether or not it's got a lens or handle attached. Everything is pretty much kind of square rectangle, so very easy to pack. I love my Ursa 12K LF, it's a workhorse of a camera, but a lot of the time I'm just gonna shoot by myself as a solo shooter, so I'm gonna grab the PYXIS 12K purely because of the size and the weight, and you essentially get maybe 80% of what you can get inside the 12K LF. And you also have a bunch of different mounting options at the top, at the bottom, on the side as well. And once you add the handle and the monitor, it makes for a very powerful, comfortable, flexible and compact setup. I love filming with the PYXIS 12K and it's arguably the most important thing. I found it very well balanced and comfortable to use regardless of the setup that I'm using. So sometimes I'll just have a prime lens and a battery at the back just with a handle and a monitor and that's it. But even if I start adding more accessories like V-lock, battery plates, different kind of cables, mounting options, long lenses, matte boxes, it still feels very balanced and very compact even though I've got a lot of gear on. And this is what I meant before with the flexibility. This is a camera that suits very small rigs and small projects, or large rigs. Like we've shot with the Atlas anamorphic lenses, they are not small lenses, and it was fine. It felt the same, obviously heavier, but still the same sort of compact balanced feeling. I'm shooting a lot of handheld, as you know, but I've also used the PYXIS 12K on a tripod a lot and also on an easy rig. Not being able to shoot high frame rates or proper slow motion with the PYXIS 6K or the Cinema Camera 6K was one of my biggest complaints. Now with the 12K, you can shoot open gate in 12K at up to 40 FPS, but most importantly, in 72 FPS in 8K and 4K open gate. Then you can even go higher and all the way to 60 FPS in 12K, but also very impressively, you can do 112 FPS in 8K or 4K in 2.4:1. Having that type of frame rates in such a small body form factor is not only useful, but also fun. I think being able to choose the mount of your camera is great, and more cameras should have the option. I actually first started using the PYXIS 12K with PL because we had the beta version, but now when I decided to get my own, I chose L mount. Since I already own the original PYXIS 6K and the Cinema Camera 6K, I already have all the adapters and the accessories and the lenses, so for me it makes absolute sense to go with the L mount. And to be honest, if you are thinking of getting this camera, I would probably go for L anyway, because I think, in my opinion, that it's the most flexible. Obviously, if you only own PL glass and you've got, or same, if you've got only EF glass and you know you're going to only be using that, then it makes sense to get that mount. But for me, L mount basically gives you the option to use anything from vintage to modern, and you don't have to worry too much about the adapters, and they're quite cheap as well. The PYXIS using the BPU style, and I really like them. First of all because they're not too big, but also because you can kind of choose the size that you want. Obviously the 12K is going to chew more than a 6K, that's for sure, but you still get more than an hour using a 98 watt. For example, I use the Core Nano, and I usually get between like an hour and 10 to an hour and 30, depending on the temperatures and the way that I'm shooting. And this is actually recording time, so if you start and stop the camera, sometimes I just shoot the whole day with just one battery. They're also quite light, so for me when I travel, when I go hiking and things like that, it's pretty good. Or when I shoot personal content, I don't have to rig up the whole thing. I actually don't really like using Vlog that much on that camera, and I use BPU as much as I can. But that being said, if I have to shoot in the cold for long periods of time, like when I was testing the Ars 18mm, I was in -6 for about 3 hours. So yeah, I'm definitely going to put Vlog because I know that I'm going to have to swap quite often. And of course, for example, when we shot that big commercial gig, we used massive Vlogs because we knew that we would be like shooting all day, every day, for days on end. So yeah, when you're going to be shooting 15 hours a day, obviously you're going to go Vlog. But it's great to kind of have the option as well. And if you already own Vlogs, then you can just get maybe 1 or 2 BPU batteries, and that should be enough for all the smaller projects. Like I said, the PYXIS 12K is a pretty complete camera, especially for its size. Aside from several buttons and useful shortcuts, you have plenty of connections, and you also have 2 media slots as well as an SDI and an Ethernet port. And of course you have 2 very useful USB-C ports, so you can use the dedicated monitor and or the EVF. I've mentioned this before I think, but the PYXIS 12K, especially when it's rigged up, actually looks like a cinema camera. This might not seem important, but perception is a real thing, especially on set when you've got clients and marketing people and when you've got like bigger crews. It looks better to have a camera that looks like a proper camera that basically justified the budget. For example, if you take the PYXIS 6K that's got the same sensor as the cinema camera 6K, on set with a cinema camera 6K, it looks different than if you've got the PYXIS with a monitor, the handle, the batteries, and that kind of shape. This is just how it is. The pocket shape used to look like a DSLR, and this is why I love using it when I'm shooting personal content or when I travel. But the PYXIS actually looks like a proper cinema camera, and this is something that can matter. I think for the price of just about $5,000, I think it's really hard to keep track of the price depending on like where you live. For example, I'm in France, in Europe, so you can get some deals, and obviously if you live in the US, it's a bit different than if you live in Australia. I think what you get for that price makes the PYXIS 12K a very hard camera to beat. It's a full frame camera that has 12K resolution, shoots RAW internally, you can shoot 112 frames per second, you've got 16 stops of dynamic range, you've got the very, very clean and easy to use interface, you've got a great build quality, you can choose your mounts, you can record in so many different kind of like codecs and combinations, you've got the color science, you get DaVinci as well, and all of that in a very well built package that is actually tiny, but that can also be scaled up depending on the project. And you also can add different accessories that are relatively cheap when compared to different like brands. So you can actually get a pretty serious setup for not that much when you compare to other cameras, or even when you compare to just 2 years ago. It's pretty incredible the kind of like jump that happened with this camera. Now, this is definitely not a perfect camera, so I want to talk about the things that I don't like about it or things that could be improved. But before that, here's a quick word about today's sponsor, Audio. So I'm really happy to have Audio as a new sponsor for this channel in 2026. As you know, I've got very few sponsors on the channel, and I'm very particular with the people that I work with. As you can imagine, Audio is a platform to license music and sound effects. Now I want to be completely honest with you, because I know that a lot of you will ask. I've been working with Artlist for many years now, as you know, and I like their content, I like their music, I like the sound effects. However, over the past few months or the past year maybe, their sponsored segments or their sponsored campaign have been heavily targeted towards AI, specifically generative AI and also generative AI for video work. As a filmmaker, this goes against what I feel and what I believe creatively. I can't align myself to it. I totally understand the need to move to AI and the usefulness of it for certain applications. I myself use it to edit, to sort footage, to retouch photos, to make my work easier, faster, but I absolutely hate that people are using other people's work and talent to create something from scratch when they are lacking said talent. And maybe call me old school, I don't know, maybe because I'm not the kind of new generations of filmmakers or content creators, but yeah, this is not something that I can align myself with. Audio had reached out to me over the past few years a few times, and I decided this year I wanted to give it a go, and so far it's been great. They really have a massive high-end catalog of unlimited access to tons of curated songs from top indie artists and composers. But to me, what really matters is a single license that pretty much covers you for everything, from YouTube monetization to social media, podcasts, weddings, and even commercial work. And also you have that lifetime coverage. That means that every track that you license will be licensed for that project forever, even if you cancel your subscription. And they also have, of course, a bunch of different tools that I'm still exploring. One that I've really enjoyed is Link Match, where you can actually take a link from a Spotify or YouTube video and drop it in there, and it will basically give you similar options in terms of the mood and the style of music to what you've just put in. This is extremely important and quite useful for me because I get inspired by soundtracks and music a lot. If you're interested in audio, go to audio.com/off2lens or use the code off2lens to get $100 off your first year of Audio Pro. Like I said, this is not a perfect camera. Even though I love Blackmagic cameras, as always, I want to make sure that I give you my honest opinions and feedback. As with the PYXIS 12K, my biggest complaint is still the lack of internal NDs. It's not an essential feature to have, but it would make the PYXIS 12K even more complete. And now that I've been using the Ursa 12K LF a lot as well, I really miss when I go back to the PYXIS 12K, the internal NDs. It's just so handy to have, even if you're not going to use it, knowing that they are there is great. It's one less step to worry about when you're changing lenses, for example. And for a lot of my documentary or commercial work, when I have the time and the budget and the space to do it, I prefer to use a matte box with my R&D filters because they are much more high quality. But for documentary work, having internal NDs is a big plus. Not sure if they can actually physically do it though with the mount and the body shape. Maybe something has to be different, but I would love to see it. The PYXIS 12K only has one audio input. This is not something that's been a problem for me, but I think for a camera of that price and that kind of like targeted audience, I think it would be much better just to have two, especially for interviews, for redundancy, or just to be able to just have two different kind of mics for two people and things like that. So you can now have more than two channels, you can have 4 channels, which is great. But 2 audio inputs would be great, especially because there's still mini XLRs. Obviously, with a body like this, you can't put a full XLR, but I think 2 mini XLRs would be the minimum. Even the Cinema Camera 6K has 2 inputs, so I think it would be great to have 2 on this body. And this is not something that I realized straight away. It's only when I first used it on a documentary last year where we had an interview and I wanted to use 2 mics and I had to use a 3.5 jack adapter for the second one. And speaking of mics again, I really wish that the internal mics on this camera were better. I love using the ones on the Ursa 12K and the Cinema Camera 6K because they're actually good enough to use as ambient and proper audio even if I wanted to. But with this one, it sounds tinny. If you put a cage around it, it's even worse. They're just not good enough to use as ambient, or you have to use them as a second or third layer like I've done on personal projects. But it's just not the same as using the Ursa or the Cinema Camera 6K. Now let's talk about the vents. This is something that I get asked all the time when I'm shooting in the snow, in the rain. Does the water go through? Does it worry you? Yes and no. Yes, it worries me because obviously it's an electronic piece of equipment, it's a camera. I'm careful with my cameras, but I'm not precious. So obviously seeing through the camera is not something that inspires confidence. Having said that, I've taken this camera to different places in the heat, in the cold, in the water, with sand, with wind, with dust, and it's been fine. In Iceland, to be 100% honest with you, the camera got drenched. I'm talking about fully covered in water for several days, and it was absolutely fine. So it's obviously, again, very robust. Obviously you can use a cage and things like that, but I think it would be great to have something that basically covers the camera or a way that the vents wouldn't be so big and so open. Obviously, there's a real reason for that. Heat dissipation, it's very important for this camera. It's packing a lot, so obviously it needs to go somewhere. So it's a very robust camera, but it's also a very open camera. I rarely talk about autofocus with Blackmagic cameras, obviously for good reason, because until now, we didn't have anything that was reliable. Having used the autofocus on the cinema camera 6K, I can definitely see the benefit of having it in the PYXIS. I think it would make an absolute beast of a camera if you had it. I think a lot more people would jump on board if you had autofocus. Obviously, it's not the same sensor. I don't even know if it's possible to put autofocus in this camera, but I think if you had it, it would make the camera very, very appealing to a lot more people. Personally, it's not a need. It's more something that I would like to have, but it's definitely not something that would prevent me from using the camera. I like to shoot manual anyway, but I think it can be definitely useful. Like for example, when you've got a 2-camera setup for an interview, making sure that the second camera is always in focus and things like that you can control through the monitor, that would be handy. So for now, it's something that I wish we could have, but we'll see. So now this is not directly about the camera, but I think a lot of people, myself included, would benefit from having a 7-inch monitor and not just a 5-inch one. I really like the current one. It's super compact, super easy to use. It's great value and makes the PYXIS 100 times better, but I think it would also be very useful and helpful to have a 7-inch version like they used to have on their older monitor, just because sometimes if you're shooting with a few people around, it's easier for them to have a look. If you're monitoring, if you don't have like a studio monitor, I think 7-inch would be great when you shoot, like if you're a director and you're close to your DP or vice versa. For interview scenes as well, I think it would be much more helpful to have 2 different sizes. If you've got a camera that's like 2 meters away and you need to still look at it, 7-inch would be obviously much better. So this is something that I wanted to mention because it's not something against the camera, but I think as part of the ecosystem for the PYXIS, 7-inch would be very welcome by a lot of people. I used to have a small HD 7-inch and I loved it, and the reason that I'm not using that is because the implementation of the dedicated monitor for the PYXIS is so much better to be able to control the camera and things like that. I would prefer to let go of the size and have all these functionalities, but having both would be great. Now I want to quickly mention some of the issues that I've seen or heard of online, especially the bending and the noise issues. I've also heard people losing some of their clips or things like that, having issues shooting in 12K. So I just wanted to address that because I get asked pretty much every day if I have encountered anything like that. So to answer briefly, no. So I've used 2 different versions. The beta version, that was a PL mount last year, and this one that I've had for many months now and that I've used pretty much every week. I haven't seen anything. I didn't look for it, like nothing jumped at me in the footage, and I've shared that footage online for the past few months. I feel very sorry for the people that have experienced that. Obviously, it's a real issue. I'm not saying it's not happening. It's just that in my case, I think I've been lucky. Obviously, if you got a camera for a specific project, you spend quite a bit of money. Having something like that must be quite frustrating, but this is not something that I have encountered. I have seen the example, so I know that it's real, but in my case, it hasn't happened. I've also used other PYXIS 12K cameras, so my friend Thomas Tessier has one as well, and we've used that for that commercial gig, and we haven't seen any issues at all, and we shot in a lot of different scenarios every single day for 15 hours, so I think we would have seen something. So yeah, I've used 3 cameras for hours and hours and hours and haven't noticed anything. I've also shot in 12K, 8K, all the different codecs and compressions. I haven't seen anything. The only issue that I've ever had with this camera that I've mentioned actually in my first impression video is that it was running extremely hot and the battery was draining quite quickly because we were shooting in a heat wave. It was 42, 43 degrees Celsius for 3 days in a row, and it was extremely, extremely hot. But we never lost a clip and we didn't have any issues with the noise, and we shot in quite dark environments as well. Never had any issues like that whatsoever. Even though I work closely with Blackmagic sometimes, there's no way I would lie about this. I still have my integrity. If there's an issue like this, I would say it. This hasn't happened to me, and I've shared a lot of footage. You can even download some of my files on the Blackmagic website. I haven't seen anything wrong. I've talked to other people as well, friends of mine that are using the 12K. They haven't had any issues as well, so maybe it's just a specific batch. I think they can fix it as well. I've seen some people saying that they got the camera back and the issue was fixed. So hopefully this is just kind of like the first version, because I think there's a lot of noise around that, and it's unfortunate because it's such a powerful and useful camera. But obviously this is a real issue, and I hope that it gets fixed very quickly. And again, just to be honest with you, this is a camera that I use for paid projects. This is not just a YouTube camera. These are cameras that are used on my actual paid proper projects. If there was an issue with this camera, if I had doubts, I wouldn't use it. I've got plenty of other cameras that I can use. There's no way I would use this one if I had any issues, and I keep shooting with it because every time I want to grab a camera, this is the one that 90% of the time fits what I want to do. So yeah, I just want to mention that. I wanted to share my own experience, and like I said, I feel very sorry if this has happened to you, and hopefully you can get it fixed, because when everything is working like it is for me, like it's been since like last August, it's an incredible camera, and one that like I said, I go for all the time just because it does pretty much everything that I need to do. So Blackmagic is known for making new cameras pretty quickly. I think we've seen that over the past couple of years, and that got me thinking about the things that I would like to see in a new version of the PYXIS 12K, or an updated, upgraded version. I'm still going to call it a PYXIS Pro. First of all, I think for me, obviously I've just mentioned it, I would love to have internal NDs, I would love to have the 2 audio inputs, but I also don't need more resolution, or I also don't need 12K to be honest. I would love to see a smaller, not smaller, but like an 8K or 6K version of this camera, if that meant that we could add more features. Obviously it made sense for them to release this one because they already had the sensor and the body. So it's just being able to kind of like marry the two and get this incredible camera. But when I really think about it, when I think about the next step, yeah, I don't think I need 12K. I would be perfectly fine with 8K or 6K if that meant that we could get more, you know, like internal NDs, even higher frame rates, maybe if it's cheaper camera or anything like that, but a more basically feature loaded camera that is a 6K or 8K version of it. And don't get me wrong, I love the camera as it is now. I think it's very powerful. But if losing the 12K meant that we could get a slightly different body to be able to make some room for the internal NDs, for more audio ports, not losing the dynamic range or the frame rates or the compression options or anything like that, basically just a slightly tweaked body, so we could add more Super 35 options, for example, anamorphic options, just more features, and basically fine-tuning, refining the PYXIS and kind of merge like different cameras into one to create a near perfect camera, if that makes sense. And also I think that if we were losing that 12K resolution, maybe we would need less power, less fans, so being able to cover the vents a little bit more, and we would also save some battery, I'm assuming, because I think we've reached the limit in terms of like resolution and in terms of what the body can handle. But I don't know what you think. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see in a new version. I've said it before and in this video as well, but the PYXIS 12K is a very complete package, a very versatile, flexible camera that should be enough for most filmmakers and small productions. And it could also be very handy on bigger productions because of its cost and size, and especially if you're using an Ursa Cine as the A-cam. And like I said before, the PYXIS 12K is the one that I grab most of the time first because it's so easy to use, it's very compact, and it's got more than enough features and specs for me. I think it's a camera that ticks a lot of boxes and is, in my opinion, the best of what Blackmagic has to offer currently between all of their cameras. And aside from the beautiful image, the codecs, the resolution, the frame rate, it's having a small, very robust, flexible and modular body that makes it extremely appealing to me. This allows you to really use different rigging options and setups to suit any type of projects that you want to, from personal, very small projects to large commercial gigs. And also I think that this is a camera that can suit more and more people as we go. I think this one grabbed a lot more attention in people because of its size and weight. It makes it more versatile, more flexible, and like I said before, it looks like a cinema camera. And we know that no camera is ever perfect, but having upgraded the 6K with more dynamic range, more resolution, more frame rates, makes it more of a workhorse of a camera. And I think if they ever find a way to put internal lenses and autofocus features in this body, I think it will be a very, very hard camera to beat. That's it for me for today, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video and you found it helpful. If you did, please consider subscribing. And of course, let me know if you've got any more questions. And also I would be very keen to hear your thoughts on this camera. And as always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Also, feel free to check out my 2 ebooks, Freelance Documentary Filmmaking and Travel Cinematography, where you can find a streamlined but comprehensive overview from pre-production all the way to marketing, built on years of my own experience shooting short documentaries and travel videos around the world. And if you are interested, I'm also doing filmmaking mentoring sessions when you can ask me anything about a wide variety of topics.